This week we begin studying the Torah anew from the beginning, and we begin with the portion of Breishit in the book of Breishit. The first word of the Torah is Breishit, in the beginning. It starts with letter Bet. The commentators ask, why didn't God start the Torah with letter Aleph? After all, Bet is the second letter in the Hebrew alphabet. Wouldn't it be better to start with Aleph? We know in Jewish history there was a Greek king who forced the sages to translate the Torah into Greek. And the sages reversed the order of the first three words, starting with the word Elokim Bereshit. God in the beginning created heaven and earth, instead of in the beginning God created. Elokim, the word Elokim begins with the letter Aleph. And there you have it, starting the Torah with the letter Aleph. Why begin with Bet? There are 5 answers I would like to show to you, and then I'll get to the 6th one, which is more important. Some of the 5 require much more explanations. They are part of the Kabbalah teachings, and this platform is not the right place. If anybody has any question, I'll be happy to address it on one-on-one basis. The first explanation is that we don't want to start with Aleph to remind us that as much as you study Torah, you didn't even begin studying the Torah. Some people attend college and they go to university to acquire a field of expertise, to get a diploma, to complete some type of a mission. Judaism teaches us that Torah is part of life, and life does not end, and there is no completion. And that's why it starts with Bet. Incidentally, the Talmud, the oral tradition, each tractate begins also with page Bet. There is no page Aleph. There is no first page, always second page. And one of the reasons is to remind us that Torah will never be able to accomplish all of it. Because anytime we feel that we can do that, we are reminded that we didn't even start letter Aleph. Another explanation is the letter Bet is closed in the back and open forward in front. Here it is the shape of the letter Bet with the rest of the word. So Bet, you can see, is open over here forward to remind us God began the Torah with a reminder that we need to move forward and constantly strive to acquire more knowledge and study more. Third explanation, the word Aleph is a reminiscence of a curse. The word curse in Hebrew is arur. The word blessing in Hebrew is with Bet, bracha, baruch atah. And therefore God wanted to begin the Torah with a blessing, so he used the letter Bet to start with. Fourth explanation is, according to Kabbalah, there are 4 worlds that God created. Atzilut is one, emanation from God, and the other 3 are separated from Atzilut, beginning with Bria with Bet. And the reason the Torah begins with Bet is to remind us that the Torah belongs to Bria, Yetzirah, Asiya, and not to Aleph, which is the word of Atzilut, emanation, supernatural, spiritual, and close to God. Because God's desire is the fulfillment of Torah, of mitzvot, and the study of Torah should take place in this physical universe. Number 5 is that the letter Bet is shaped with 3 corners, 3 sides, but the 4th one is always open. According to Kabbalah, the universe was created in such a way that the northern side is always unfinished or not done, which means, according to Kabbalah, anytime we have calamities, a hurricane or tsunami, they always move forward towards the north side of the universe. And that's a reminder to anyone who is a smart aleck, thinking that they are as powerful as God, they can create and they can control. God says to them, well, I left one corner, one side of the universe undone. If you are as smart, why don't you try and complete and finish it? By doing so, in other words, can you stop all the calamities? Can you stop all the tsunamis and hurricanes and great floods? If you're able to, then you will be as powerful as God. And so far, nobody was able to come forward. And that's why we have the beginning of the Torah with the letter Bet, to remind us that there is one side of the world which is undone, unfinished, and anyone who feels is powerful, let's see if he can complete it. And finally, the Rebbe tells us that the real explanation, the real reason, and it's touched upon one of the explanations from before, is the word bet, also in Hebrew means bitul. Bitul is self-nullification. There is another ingredient to acquiring Torah. If someone looks at Torah as science, as a topic or an object to study, they may never dive deep enough to receive or to connect with the Torah in the real level the Torah is meant to be. When we study the Torah, before we begin, there is a bracha, there is a blessing we must recite. Baruch ata Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato, Baruch ata Hashem noten haTorah. You must bless God before we study Torah. Part of the blessing of bracha is bitul, to nullify ourselves before God before we come close to study and acquire the knowledge. And that's why the Torah begins with bet. In other words, when you open the book to study, it must be the second stage in the process of studying Torah and acquiring the Torah's teaching. The first stage is actually nullifying ourselves before God, realizing that God, the gifter of the Torah, wants to connect with us through the Torah, and only then we are able to actually understand the Torah to its full meaning. Thank you very much for joining me.